second my 12-year-old granddaughter stood up in that courtroom, I knew something was about to change. I just had no idea it would change everything. I was sitting there, 62 years old, hands shaking in my lap, finally doing what I should have done decades ago. My husband Richard sat across the aisle with his expensive attorney, looking at me with that smug expression I'd seen 1,000 times before. He thought he'd already won. He always thought he'd won. Then Lily's small voice cut through the silence. "Your Honor, may I show you something my grandmother doesn't know about?" I turned around and saw her standing there, clutching her mother's old tablet like it was the most important thing in the world. My daughter Jennifer looked just as shocked as I was. Neither of us had any idea what was about to happen. The judge, a woman with kind but sharp eyes, leaned forward and asked who she was. Lily introduced herself as my granddaughter, and before Richard's lawyer could shut it down, the judge allowed her to come forward. When Lily pressed play on that tablet, the entire courtroom went dead silent, and as my husband's voice echoed through that room, I watched his face turn absolutely white. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this all began. 3 months before that courtroom moment, I was standing in the kitchen of the house Richard and I had shared for 40 years. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was making his breakfast the same way I had every single day since 1984. Scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, black coffee. I could do it with my eyes closed. I had done it with my eyes closed. His voice boomed from upstairs, demanding to know where his blue tie was, the one he told me to have cleaned. My hands froze over the eggs. I had taken it to the cleaners. I had picked it up. I had hung it in his closet exactly where he liked it. Third tie from the left. I called back that it was in his closet, keeping my voice calm and level the way I'd learned to do. I heard him stomping around, drawers slamming, and then silence. He'd found it. Of course he had, right where I told him it would be. Us. But there was no apology. No thank you. There never was. This was my life. This had been my life. Wake up, make breakfast, clean the house, make lunch, run errands, make dinner, go to bed, repeat, for 40 years. Richard came down the stairs with his tie perfectly knotted. He was 65, still handsome in that silver-haired executive way, and he'd retired 2 years ago as CFO of a manufacturing company. Since then, he'd been home all day, which meant I'd been under his watchful, critical eye every single moment. He sat down without looking at me and said the coffee was cold. I had poured it 30 seconds earlier. It was still steaming, but I said nothing. I just told him I'd make fresh and dumped perfectly good coffee down the drain. Then he brought up my sister Dorothy. She'd called the day before wanting to meet for lunch. He told me he didn't think I should be spending so much time with her. Said she was filling my head with nonsense. Dorothy had been telling me for years to leave Richard. She'd seen the way he spoke to me, the way he controlled every aspect of my life. She called it emotional abuse. I called it marriage. I told him we were just having lunch. He looked me dead in the eyes and said no, we weren't. He told me to call her and cancel. Told me to say I was busy. Something inside me cracked that morning. Maybe it was his tone. Maybe it was the fact that I was 62 years old and still being told who I could have lunch with. Maybe it was the sudden realization that I'd given up my nursing career 40 years ago, because Richard said his career was more important, and now I had nothing of my own. Nothing. I heard myself say the word before I even knew I was going to say it. No. Richard's head snapped up. He asked me what I just said. I told him no. I said I was having lunch with my sister. The explosion was immediate. He stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. He asked me how I dared defy him after everything he'd given me. This house, this life. His voice was rising, his face turning red. I found my own voice then. I told him it was a house I cleaned every day, a life where I couldn't even have coffee with my own sister. He called me ungrateful and then stopped himself, but the rage in his eyes was burning. He told me to have my lunch, but warned me not to come crying to him when I realized how good I had it. I had lunch with Dorothy that day, and the next week, and the week after that. With each conversation, I started to remember who I used to be. Margaret Sullivan, the nurse who worked in pediatrics and loved making children smile. The woman who wanted to travel, who loved painting, who had dreams beyond being someone's wife. 8 weeks after that first no, I filed for divorce. Richard actually laughed when I told him. He asked me where I thought I was going to go, reminded me I was 62 with no money, no career, no skills. His words, not mine. I told him Jennifer said I could stay with her and Lily until I figured things out. His expression darkened. He said of course she did, said she never liked him, and had probably been poisoning me against him for years. I told him no one had poisoned me. I had just finally woken up. That's when the threats started pouring out of him like venom. He'd make sure I got nothing. He'd tell everyone I was mentally unstable. He'd prove I was unfit to be around my own granddaughter. The words kept coming, and in that moment, I realized I'd been swallowing that poison for 4 decades. I moved in with Jennifer and Lily 2 days later. I took only my clothes and the few things that were truly mine. Jennifer was 34, divorced herself, and she understood exactly what I was going through. And Lily, my sweet granddaughter, with her mother's dark hair and my blue eyes, hugged me so tight when I walked through the door. She whispered that she was glad I was there, that her mom had been worried about me for a long time. Caesar. Living with them felt like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. I helped with cooking, but no one demanded it. I spent time with Lily, helping with homework, listening to her talk about school and her friends. I started painting again, setting up a little easel in the guest room. Small watercolors at first, then bigger pieces. But Richard wasn't finished with me. The divorce proceedings began, and that's when I met my attorney, Miss Chen. She was sharp, in her 40s, with a no-nonsense attitude that I immediately appreciated. At our first meeting, she asked me about my finances. I had to admit I had none. Everything was in Richard's name. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, the investments. He always said it was easier that way for taxes. Miss Chen's jaw tightened. She told me this was common in cases like mine, but I was entitled to half of the marital assets. After 40 years, the court would recognize my contributions to the marriage, even without a paycheck. I told her Richard wasn't going to make this easy. She asked if he'd shown any concerning behavior since I filed. I thought about the late-night phone calls, the emails calling me selfish and crazy, the way he'd driven past Jennifer's house multiple times. She told me to document everything, save every email, every voicemail. If he showed up, call the police. I documented everything I could, but what I didn't know was that Lily was doing the same thing. Before the main divorce hearing, there was a preliminary matter. Richard had demanded grandparent visitation rights, which meant we had to appear before a judge. He showed up with his expensive lawyer and a whole presentation about what a devoted grandfather he'd been. Photos of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school plays. What he didn't mention was that I had organized every single one of those events. He just showed up. His attorney stood and spoke smoothly about Richard's dedication to Lily since birth. Then he dropped the bomb. He expressed concern about my recent erratic behavior and mental instability. Said Richard was worried I might try to keep him from seeing his granddaughter. Mental instability. The words hit me like ice water. The attorney continued. He claimed Richard had noticed significant changes in my behavior. Mood swings, irrational decisions, memory lapses. He said Richard had consulted with medical professionals who believed I might be experiencing early-stage dementia. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was absurd. Miss Chen stood up to object, but Richard's lawyer cut her off, handing papers to the judge. Statements from neighbors about my supposed forgetfulness. Medical opinions based on my age and so-called behavior patterns. I looked at those statements. Our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, claimed I'd seemed confused at the grocery store. Mr. Reynolds said I'd forgotten his name at a neighborhood gathering. Both of them were Richard's friends. Both of them were lying. The judge looked concerned as she read the documents. She asked me directly if I'd experienced any memory issues. I told her no. I was 62, not 92. I was in perfect health. She suggested that perhaps an evaluation would be appropriate. And that's when Lily stood up. Your Honor, may I show you something my grandmother doesn't know about? The judge asked her to come forward. Jennifer walked up behind her, looking protective. Lily handed the tablet to the judge and explained that about 3 months ago, she had gotten worried about me. She'd overheard her grandfather on the phone talking about me, and it sounded mean. So she took her mom's old tablet and started recording things, just in case. The judge asked her gently what things she had recorded. Lily said she recorded her grandfather when he came to their house to talk to her mom about the divorce. He didn't know she was listening. She pressed play. Richard's voice filled that courtroom crystal clear. He said he didn't care what the lawyers said. I wasn't getting a dime. He'd worked too hard to let me walk away with half of everything. Jennifer's voice came through next, tired and strained. She told him that after 40 years, I deserved something. Richard cut her off. He said I deserved what he said Ian deserved. Then he revealed his plan. He'd already talked to a doctor friend. The doctor was willing to testify that I was experiencing cognitive decline, dementia, early Alzheimer's, whatever they needed. With that on record, Richard could argue I wasn't competent to make decisions. He'd get conservatorship, control everything, and I'd end up right back where I belonged. My hands flew to my mouth. Miss Chen gripped my shoulder. Jennifer's voice on the recording sounded horrified. She told him that was fraud. Richard's response was chilling. He said he could do it and he would. I had embarrassed him enough by walking out after 40 years, made him look bad to their friends. He said I was going to learn what happens when you cross him. The recording stopped. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. Judge Morrison's face had transformed from concern to absolute fury. She looked at Richard and asked if he had just heard himself admit to planning fraud upon her court. Richard's lawyer was whispering frantically to him, but Richard was frozen, staring at Lily like he couldn't process what had just happened. He stammered that it was taken out of context. The judge's voice could have cut glass. She told him he had just admitted to planning to fake a medical diagnosis to gain control of his wife's assets. That wasn't just fraud. It was elder abuse. Lily spoke quietly again. She said there were more recordings. Richard had called me terrible names when he talked to her mother, and once he came over when Jennifer wasn't home, and Lily had hidden upstairs and recorded him then, too. She played another clip. Richard's voice, cold and calculating, telling me I was making myself look senile and unstable, warning me the judge would see that, threatening that I'd end up in a home with him controlling my care. My voice on the recording sounded small and shaky. I just said I wanted a divorce. Richard's response was brutal. He said I wanted to throw away 40 years, fine, but he would make sure I walked away with nothing, and he would make sure everyone knew I'd lost my mind. My sister, my friends, even Lily. They'd all think I was crazy. He asked who was going to believe a 62-year-old woman who suddenly decided her perfectly good husband was the enemy. There was the sound of a door slamming. Then Lily's young voice came through, shaking. She asked if I was okay. My voice answered that I was fine, but I hadn't been fine. I had cried that night, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake, wondering if maybe I really was crazy to think I could start over at my age. Judge Morrison turned to Richard's attorney and told him to have a serious conversation with his client about the penalties for perjury and attempted fraud. She denied Richard's petition entirely. She issued a restraining order. Richard was to have no contact with me, Jennifer, or Lily, pending the outcome of the divorce. Richard tried to stand, tried to speak. The judge told him to sit down. She wasn't finished. She was referring the matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Richard's face went from pale to crimson. He called it ridiculous, pointed out that Lily had recorded him without permission. The judge's response was perfect. She said it happened in his daughter's home, where he had no expectation of privacy, and she said thank goodness Lily did record him, or he might have succeeded in his scheme. Then she looked at Lily with something like admiration. She told my granddaughter that she may have just saved me from a terrible injustice. Lily looked at me with tears streaming down her face. She apologized for not telling me. She said she didn't want to scare me, but she heard what he was doing and knew it was wrong, and she just wanted to help. I stood up and went to her. I pulled her into my arms and told her she had helped more than she would ever know. The main divorce hearing 2 weeks later was almost anticlimactic. Richard's original attorney withdrew from the case after Judge Morrison's threats. His new attorney, fully aware of what had happened, advised him to settle. I got half of everything. The house would be sold and proceeds split. The retirement accounts, the investments, all of it divided equally, after 40 years of having nothing in my own name. I was going to be financially independent. But more than the money, I had my freedom. The day the divorce was finalized, I was 62 years and 4 months old. Jennifer took Lily and me out to celebrate at a nice restaurant downtown. Jennifer asked me over dessert what I was going to do next. I had thought about it. I had money now. Not a fortune, but enough. I had time. I had myself back. I told her I might travel, maybe take a real art class. I'd always wanted to paint seriously, not just as a hobby. Lily grinned and asked what about dating. She reminded me I was single now. I laughed and told her let's not get ahead of ourselves. I had a lot of living to do first. 40 years of it, actually. That was 6 months ago. I'm 63 now. I live in a small condo I bought with my settlement money. It has big windows that flood the rooms with light, and a spare bedroom I've turned into an art studio. My watercolors have gotten good enough that I sold one at a local gallery last month. Just a small landscape of the park near my home. But someone thought it was worth buying. Someone thought my work mattered. I have coffee with Dorothy every week now. No permission needed. I'm taking a painting class at the community center. I joined a book club. Last month, I went to Maine for a weekend workshop on botanical illustration. Something I'd always wanted to try. Jennifer and Lily come over for dinner every Sunday. Lily is doing well in school. She wants to be a lawyer now. She told me it's because she wants to help people like me. I told her she would be wonderful at it. As for Richard, I heard through mutual friends that he's bitter and angry. He tells anyone who will listen that I stole half his money after he took care of me for 40 years. Some people believe him. I don't care. The people who matter know the truth. Sometimes I look back at those 40 years and feel sad about the time I lost, all those dreams I put aside, all those pieces of myself I gave away. But then I remember something important. I have time now. However many years I have left, they belong to me. Every decision, every choice, every single day, it's all mine. And it started with a 12-year-old girl who loved her grandmother enough to document the truth. I keep that tablet on my bookshelf now. Lily has a new one, but that old tablet stays right where I can see it. It reminds me that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. Sometimes it's a child who sees more clearly than any adult, who understands that love means protecting the people you care about, even when they don't know they need protecting. That tablet saved my life. But more than that, Lily's courage gave me permission to finally save myself. I'm 63 years old. I'm divorced. I'm an artist. I'm free. And I'm just getting started.